For today's project, I'm starting with this egg that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. The surface is pretty slick, so I'm going in with my finger sander just to rough it up a little bit and give something for my paint to grab onto. Then I thought I probably should prime it, so I'm covering the whole piece in Paint Couture's premium primer in the color white, and I'm going to let that dry for a few hours. If you don't have a primer, you could cover the whole thing with some Mod Podge first and then go in with your paint. But of course, make sure you let that Mod Podge dry. And once this is dry, I'm going to mix the color Simply White by Waverly in with some salt wash. And I'm going to cover the whole thing. And then I'm going to go back in and stipple and dab that paint on there so it has a nice texture to it. And then I'm using this egg as a template and tracing it out onto this cardboard. I cut a total of 3 pieces and I'm going to glue them together to build up some thickness. But even after all of this, it didn't feel quite sturdy enough. So I grabbed some photo backing and cut that out as well and then glued it in for some extra support. Off camera, I did try decoupaging this piece, but honestly, I wasn't loving how it turned out. I loved the napkin, but I didn't love the napkin for this project. So I'm covering it with this really pretty cardstock. I love how it's vintage and shabby and using my glue stick. And I love to use my glue stick for decoupaging. You know, just keep it interesting, mix it up, right? I use all kinds of things. I'm placing it right inside my egg and it fits so nice and snug. So I don't even need to glue it for this part. I just press it down so it's sitting securely in place. And then to finish off the edges, and so you don't see the small gaps there, I'm going around with this pretty soft pink ribbon and I'm going to glue that all along the sides. And then I'm going to go back in and add these pretty pearls for a little extra detail and charm. Now I'm taking some Spanish moss and starting to build a little nest. And the best way I can describe this is to grab a small bundle and begin gently spinning it in your hands. As you're doing that, use your thumbs to press into the center while kind of cupping the outside, almost like you're shaping a tiny bowl. It's a bit of back and forth motion, spinning, pressing, and then lightly squeezing until it starts to hold like a nest shape. And just take a second and just keep spinning and squeezing, and you'll have a sweet little nest. And I'm just checking the fit as I go, just placing the cover on top to make sure my nest will fit nicely inside. And then I'm going to take this reindeer moss and I'm going to glue this into the bottom. I'm using Aleene's Tacky Glue because that's going to dry clear. It takes a little bit longer to dry, but it does dry clear and gives a really nice hold. After testing the fit, I realized my nest was just a little too big, so I'm going back in and adjusting it, making it slightly smaller just by using some hot glue and some more of that Aleene's Tacky Glue and just squeezing and just making sure it's a nice tight nest. And then I'm going to glue that down using some hot glue. Then I'm going to add a little more moss and some baby's breath and Yellow Baby's Breath, just adding a little pop of color. I got this at Hobby Lobby, and I'm also gonna place these little tiny plastic eggs you'll see here in a second. I got those at Hobby Lobby. And I just think these add the perfect touch of whimsy. You could always make some eggs out of clay and maybe paint them. I think that would look super cute too. But this is what I have on hand. And so I am working really hard to use what I have in my stash. And I have so much that I still didn't get to use this year because as a crafter, time just goes by so quick, and we're always crafting ahead of time. So I think these are just perfect. And of course, I had to use my embossing gun to get rid of those pesky glue strings. Back when Redesign had their spring release, I made this sweet little chick and made that frame out of tiny craft sticks. And I'm going to glue that right to the center. Was kind of up higher. It's higher than the center. Then I'm going to take my Gorilla Glue gel and glue all along the sides. And then I'm going to carefully place the cover on top to seal everything in. Now, I did have two of these eggs, so I went ahead and made some resin castings using my Blooming Banners mold and my Reese and Swags mold. When you're working with resin, there's a sweet spot. While it's still warm and flexible, that's the perfect time to shape it. You can just gently bend it around whatever substrate you're working with, tape it into place if needed, which generally I do, and let it cool so it holds its shape. And once everything is set, I'm going to go in and adhere my pieces using a mix of hot glue and that Gorilla Glue gel. And that's really going to keep it nice and secure. It's not going to go anywhere. And I'm going to add the swags along the sides, and then I'm going to place the banner along the bottom. Then I'm going to attach these small feet that I picked up on Amazon, just three of them along the bottom, two in the front, and then one in the back. And then finishing the top off with a pretty little medallion. But then I decided it looked a little too plain, so I'm going to add a few other details. This is my Timeless Ties mold. I dusted the mold with some cornstarch using my dad's air dry clay. I pushed the clay into the mold and it came out so easily. I'm going to glue that to the top using my Tight Bond Quick and Thick. And then I also cast this little rose design here, and I'm going to place that right under my bow. And once all my castings were in place, I went over it with some white chalk paint. I think this is like the color Buttercream by Paint Couture. I made this project like 4 weeks ago and just now getting it edited. But I painted the castings and all along the bottom. I even painted the little feet. And off camera, I went over the back of the egg with a little mineral chalk paint, just dry brushing over the surface, and that's going to catch all those raised areas from the salt wash. This really helps highlight the texture and also brings out the subtle details in the paint. And honestly, if you think about it, a real egg has that soft, uneven texture too, so it just adds like a more natural, authentic feel, I think, to this piece. Let me know, are you still in the mood for Easter DIYs? If you are, I really hope that this gives you a little inspiration. I know a lot of other creators are starting to wrap things up and move on to spring and everyday decor. But honestly, if you're still loving Easter, I'd love to know. And I say go for it. Just keep crafting what you love. After my chalk paint dried, I went over it with Extreme Garden Satin, and that's going to seal in our chalk paint. Then I went over it with this light brown sugar glaze by Paint Couture, letting it settle into all those low points and details. And this is really going to bring everything to life and give it that soft age look and also add some depth to this. Now, I wanted to add some wording to my banner, and so I reached for my IOD stamps. And don't ask me how to pronounce this, but I'm gonna go for a phrase that means cute little chick. It's actually a term that can be used affectionately for a person too, kind of like saying cutie or sweet little one. But this for this piece, it simply means cute little chick in French. Next, I'm going in and painting all the little details on my castings using various Luxe metallic paints by Paint Couture. So I'm gonna just let you sit back and watch as everything starts to come together and those little details really begin to stand out. And then once everything was dry, I went back in with some more Van Dyke Brown antiquing glaze because some of those finer details can get a little lost. So you can really see the difference when I do this step. To me, the difference is like night and day. It just brings everything to life. This is definitely a step that I don't like to skip. I'm always drawn to that vintage, time-worn look, but if it's not your style, you could absolutely leave it as it is and skip the glazes altogether. I always say craft your style and do what you love in your home. I'm also bringing the Van Dyke Brown along the back of the egg, wiping it back as I go, and just working it around the entire piece. This sweet little egg was so fun to create. I just love how she came together. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, I would be so grateful if you hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for spending time with me today. Until the next one, bye.